Hello, everyone. Tonight we're going to wander barefoot into the forested heart of what is now southwestern Nigeria, under the starlit canopy where the ancient Yoruba people once walked with the spirits, listened to the wind, and asked these questions only the wind could answer. You're not in the modern world anymore. Your feet are on packed earth, cool from the day's heat, and somewhere in the brush, a small drum begins to thump, slowly, steadily, like a heart that hasn't decided whether to calm down or panic. You might not survive this, but don't worry. This isn't one of those stories with swords or burning stakes. There are no howling mobs, no torches, no pointy hats. Instead, this is the story of a culture that decided not to make witches their scapegoat. And that's what makes it so curious and beautiful and quietly radical. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I'm doing here. And if you're feeling chatty, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now turn off the lights, let the gentle hum of the fan surround you, and let yourself quietly drift into tonight's story. You find yourself just outside a grove, not far from an ancient Yoruba village. You can smell the night, wood smoke, crushed herbs, dust settling into silence. The sky above you isn't completely black. It's blue-black, almost textured, like velvet pressed against your cheek. The trees here lean toward one another, like they're whispering secrets. You're told this place is sacred, not just old, alive. You feel it too. They call this an Igbo Oro, a forest where only initiated men may go. Not because women are evil, not because children are in danger, but because what happens here must remain protected. Think of it as a library that breathes. And tonight, lucky you, the trees seem to have made an exception. They've let you in. A voice behind you, low and rhythmically slow, starts to hum. You don't know the words, but you recognize the feeling. It's not joy, not sadness. It's something heavier, the kind of tone people use when saying goodbye to someone they still love. And then, a sound. Clack, clack, clack. Palm nuts being cast onto a mat. This isn't fortune-telling, not in the Western sense. This is Ifa, a spiritual technology that predates Google by centuries and is still, frankly, more poetic. The diviner doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. He knows you're there. He knows you have questions. Everyone who comes here does. You want to understand how this world works. You want to know why some children don't live past their naming day. Why crops fail after a red sky. Why your cousin's bones bend backward. But this isn't Europe, and this isn't Salem. No one here is screaming witch. No one is drawing a line between evil woman and unlucky life. Instead, you're told to listen. To the ground, to your dreams, to the wind. There are spirits here, yes. They're called Orisa. They are not gods in the way you might think. They're more like deeply emotional, slightly unpredictable roommates with cosmic Wi-Fi. Some are gentle, some are fiery. All demand respect, especially Oya, the one you feel in the breeze now, the Orisha of storms, change, and ancestors. If you hear her, duck. One of the more peculiar beliefs you'll encounter tonight is the idea that illness, yes, even a stubbed toe, might be a message. maybe from your ancestors, maybe from an Orisha, maybe even from your own spirit, reminding you that you've forgotten who you are. Historians still debate whether the Yoruba saw every misfortune as spiritual. Some argue that the lines between natural and supernatural were more blurred than we assume. Others say the Yoruba were more pragmatic, that they used ritual not to explain away science, but to give meaning to the unexplainable. Either way, you're here now, and you're starting to see that this isn't a world obsessed with blaming. It's a world obsessed with balance. When things go wrong, the question isn't who did this, but what's out of place. You walk deeper into the grove. The air is cooler now, quieter. Even the insects seem respectful. In the moonlight, you spot a carving, a face, half smiling, half scowling, emerging from the bark of a tree. You blink, and it's gone. Or maybe it never was. Your eyes are playing tricks on you, or the grove is. You step carefully past a ring of stones. You weren't told to, but your gut says not to disturb them. Good call. A bird calls in the distance, high, sharp, and hollow. You're told it's a sign someone's about to lie in the village, which is impressive, considering no one's spoken in over 20 minutes. A man with a wrapper tied at his waist and a white chalk pattern across his chest passes you without a glance. He carries a small bowl of water and something wrapped in cloth. You don't ask questions. You're learning. In Yoruba land, questions are often answered by silence or song or an accidental gust of wind that knocks over a calabash. Back in the village, a child is being named. Her eyes are wide. She doesn't cry. The elders lean in, curious. Her name means she who hears the ancestors. A bit of pressure for someone not even out of swaddling cloth, but that's how it works here. Every name is a contract with the universe. Meanwhile, someone falls ill. Not dramatically, just a quiet man who stops eating. His wife goes to the diviner, who consults the Ifa. The verdict? He forgot his father's praise name during the last ancestral festival. No one blames him. No one accuses him of curses. They simply cook a feast and chant the name loud enough for the stars to hear. And the man? He recovers. Slowly, like a plant after a harsh sun. And you? You're starting to feel it too. That hum, that rhythm, that quiet understanding that in this place, mystery isn't a thing to be feared. It's something to be fed. Gently, with ritual, with music, with memory. You sit now beneath a fig tree. Someone hands you a gourd. You drink. It tastes like earth and something sweet beneath. You exhale. This is how it begins. Not with a fire, not with a trial, but with a whisper in the trees that says, "You don't need witches. You have stories. You're still under the fig tree." The taste of that earthy drink lingers in your mouth like roasted yam dipped in honey, unexpectedly sweet, slow to fade. Someone hums a lullaby nearby, but it's not meant for you. It's for the spirits. Because tonight, they're listening. You start to notice what isn't here. No crosses, no crucibles, no men with ropes or flaming brands looking for witches. The Yoruba world doesn't seem to need them, which makes you wonder, what if witches don't exist here at all? But that's not entirely true. There is something here, something feared, something whispered about, something close enough to witchcraft to make your hair stand on end when it's mentioned after dark. The Yoruba word is Ij. You hear it before you understand it. A man warns his son to stay quiet when the wind shifts at night, lest he attract the age. A grandmother pauses mid-story, eyes flicking sideways, as if the word itself might be listening. You try to ask what it means, but everyone keeps replying with the same not quite answer. They're not witches, but they're powerful. Here's where it gets tricky. The Yoruba didn't have an exact one-to-one translation for the European idea of the witch. There was no need. Misfortune didn't have to come from an enemy. Illness didn't require a scapegoat. That would have been too easy, too unbalanced. Still, the AJ remain an enigma. Historians still debate whether the AJ were a literal group of women, or more like a metaphor, a personification of cosmic force. Some say they were elders who protected the community through mysterious, sometimes terrifying means. Others argue they were feared outsiders who acted as shadow enforcers, punishing selfishness and arrogance. But no matter how you define them, one thing's clear. If a child woke screaming in the night, the age might be blamed. If a harvest spoiled and no rat or flood could be blamed, people would gather their things and offer up palm oil to appease the unseen. You lie back and stare at the stars. There's a legend about a woman named Oranson, sometimes seen as a human, sometimes as an Oresha, who lived among mortals and taught them secrets. How to farm, how to heal, how to hear the earth. But when her rules were broken, she vanished into the forest, taking her gifts with her. Some believe Oranson was an AJ, a being both maternal and dangerous, revered and feared. It's a little like walking through a town where everyone smiles at you, but no one says why you shouldn't touch the old shrine near the stream. You meet someone tonight, an elderly woman with a single gold tooth, wrapped in layers of cloth so bright they glow in the dark. She carries a woven bag filled with crushed herbs and red chalk. You don't ask questions. Instead, you follow her as she makes her rounds. First, she places kola nuts at a crossroads. Then she murmurs something to a small stone beneath a tree root. Finally, she walks into a hut and sits beside a child with fever. She doesn't scold, doesn't panic, just fans the child slowly, repeating a phrase over and over, barely audible. Go back, little one. Go back to the place where no feet have walked. You feel it in your spine, not fear, not even belief, just stillness, like something paused the world for a breath to see what she'd say next. And then, as quickly as it began, she stands, brushes off her knees and leaves. The fever breaks by morning. Aje? She never says, and you don't ask. The AJ aren't hunted in Yoruba culture. They're respected, avoided, sometimes loved, sometimes feared, but never burned, never put on trial. Instead of a witch hunt, the Yoruba developed something much more subtle and more fascinating: collective harmony. There's a proverb here. You hear it more than once tonight. The chicken does not forget the hawk, even when it drinks. Meaning, even in peace there's war. Even in kindness there's power. The age weren't the enemies of society. They were the immune system. And you begin to wonder if the Yoruba way might have saved Europe a lot of unnecessary bonfires. At one point, someone hands you a calabash filled with cowries. You shake it lightly and feel the rattle of centuries inside. You're told that Ajay can speak through dreams, through animals, even through wind, which makes you think about all those unexplained things in your own life, the dreams that repeated until you wrote them down, the pet that stared too long at nothing, the breeze that slammed the door when you were arguing. Coincidence? Or did the age travel? A chicken crosses your path, you freeze. A young boy beside you chuckles and says, "Relax, that one doesn't talk." You laugh, then glance back, just in case. The chicken is staring, of course. You're shown a mask next. It's carved from wood, painted in ochre and black, with hollow eyes and a mouth shaped in a silent scream. It belonged to a dancer who performed during the Egungun festival, a celebration of ancestors. Some say the dancer disappeared after his final spin. Others say he became the wind. Again, you ask, which? And again, the answer, not quite. You're starting to get it. The Yoruba world isn't black and white. It's more like indigo, dark, rich, layered, and impossible to scrub off completely once it touches your skin. You think about how easy it would have been to point fingers, to burn someone for the wrong harvest or a sick goat. But the Yoruba didn't need to. They built a society where even the mysterious had a place, where fear didn't demand blood, only balance. As you walk back toward the grove, you hear that same lullaby from earlier. The voice is older now, wiser, and as your eyes begin to close, the wind picks up just slightly, brushing your face like a mother checking for fever. You don't ask if it's Aja. You say thank you. You wake slowly, not from sleep exactly, but from the kind of trance that only thick night air and steady drums can cause. Your skin feels heavier, like you've absorbed something through it. Heat, dust, meaning. Morning is a long way off, but time isn't so reliable here. In Yoruba land, what matters isn't when things happen. It's how you carry them when they do. You're about to rise when someone gestures for you to stay seated. "They're coming," he says softly. "The babalawo is ready." The diviner. In Yoruba culture, the babalawo is more than a priest. He's an archivist, philosopher, therapist, and poet all in one. He doesn't just guess the future. He opens coded paths into your past, then offers riddles that feel suspiciously like truth. The name itself means father of secrets. You get the sense that even he doesn't know everything he knows. Tonight, you get to watch. He sits on a mat with his knees folded, a square tray in front of him. In his hand, 16 sacred palm nuts. His client, a nervous young man, sits across from him, eyes darting like a goat that knows it's being discussed. The babalawo tosses the nuts from hand to hand. Click, click, click. Each fall produces a line, and each line is a mark, like a Morse code of the gods. These marks form an odu, a sacred verse, part of a vast oral library that's been memorized and passed down for over 1,000 years. Each odu contains stories, advice, omens, warnings, and sometimes jokes, like a cosmic podcast episode you didn't know you subscribed to. Today's message: the man forgot to greet the dawn properly last week. That's why his yams went soft. Not magic, not a witch, just poor spiritual hygiene. The diviner doesn't accuse. He gently tells a story of a hunter who once stepped over his own shadow without bowing to the rising sun. The hunter lost his way. His traps caught nothing. But after he poured libation and whispered to the morning, everything returned. The young man nods, looking relieved. He's been seen. Not blamed, just reminded. Historians still debate whether this kind of spiritual counsel was truly democratic, or if it privileged certain clans, certain genders, certain statuses. Some claim the Babalawo wielded enormous soft power, subtly influencing politics through metaphor. Others argue they were mostly humble, poorly paid workers who performed spiritual housekeeping for a community too busy to decode the divine on their own. But you're not here to solve the academic side. You're here to feel what it's like to be part of a culture that sought insight, not punishment. After the reading, the Babalawo begins to chant. It's a low, rolling sound, like a river turning in its sleep. The verse is an Ifa tale about a turtle who tried to outwit a hurricane. The turtle succeeded, but only after remembering his grandmother's name. Names matter here. Names hold power. You feel a strange pressure in your chest, like something's been trying to get your attention, and now it has it. Someone hands the young man a small packet. Herbs tied in red thread and a strip of white cloth. Sleep with it, says the Babalawo, and thank your ancestors in the morning. The young man bows low, nearly touching his head to the earth, and departs. Now the Babalawo turns to you. You blink. Surely not. But he gestures. Come. You sit before him, cross-legged, trying not to seem too awake or too asleep. He looks at you, not through you, but into you, like a cat deciding whether or not to trust you with its secrets. Then he tosses the palm nuts. They scatter, they land. His brow furrows, then lifts. He begins to chant again, but slower this time, like he's choosing the words with extra care. The verse he speaks tells of a stranger from far away who wandered into a sacred grove by accident, only to find that he had been expected all along. You look around. You feel a cold ripple run up your arms. You want to ask if this is real, but what would that even mean? Instead, the Babalawo says something you'll never forget. The wind is not confused. You're just walking too fast to hear it. Then he hands you a stone. Small, gray, ordinary looking, except for the white swirl in the center. When you dream, hold it, he says. Not to control the dream, but to remember who sent it. Later, someone explains, that wasn't divination for your benefit. It was the land welcoming you. Not because you're special, but because you finally slowed down enough to listen. You walk out of the hut slowly, as if time has grown heavier. The night smells different now, like riverbank moss and old smoke. You notice a boy standing nearby, staring up at the stars. You ask him what he's thinking. He shrugs. I'm wondering if the stars are dreaming us. And for some reason, you don't laugh. It sounds perfectly reasonable. In the distance, drums begin again. Not fast ones, but slow, like a yawn stretched into rhythm. You realize that everyone here, young, old, living, dead, is part of the same great conversation. And the Babalawo, he's just the one who knows where to place the commas. You sit beneath another tree, clutching your stone. You don't know what you believe, but that doesn't matter here. Belief isn't the point, participation is. You whisper a name you haven't said aloud in years, just to see what happens. The wind picks up. You smile. You're starting to realize that this isn't a story you're watching from the outside. It's a slow, spiraling walk inward, the kind that sneaks into your bones without asking. Tonight, your steps lead toward a riverbank where shadows curl around tree roots like sleeping snakes, and every rustle in the reeds might be a story clearing its throat. You're here to learn about destiny and cowrie shells. A small hunched woman named Itialode sits near the water, her hands busy with a bundle of palm fibers. She hums under her breath, something between a lullaby and a warning. You sit beside her, careful not to disrupt the rhythm. She doesn't look at you, just gestures at the bowl in front of her, filled with smooth white cowries. "This is your Ori," she says finally. "Your head, your spirit, your path." Now, when Yoruba people say head, they don't just mean the thing above your shoulders. They mean your inner compass, the divine part of you that chose your destiny before you were born. Yes, you heard that right. According to Yoruba belief, you picked your life, your strengths, your struggles, your stubborn tendency to trust the wrong people. All of it was chosen by your Ori before it slipped down into this human body. And if that idea makes you uncomfortable, welcome to the club. The idea that you chose the hard things in your life, that maybe your detours were on purpose, that's a lot to process while barefoot beside a spirit-haunted river. But the Yoruba weren't interested in guilt. They were interested in alignment. If something in your life isn't working, maybe you're not listening to your Ori. Maybe you're swimming against the current you once asked for. So how do you know your path? Cowries. Ialode dips her hand into the bowl and draws out a handful. With a flick of her wrist, she scatters them across a reed mat. Some land mouth up, others mouth down. She counts. She smiles. "You ask too many questions," she says softly, "but your spirit is old." You blush, which is ridiculous, because she's probably not even talking to you. Historians still debate whether this kind of divination was truly individualized, or if it followed a cultural script that simply felt personal. Some believe the patterns of cowries were mere probability dressed in poetry. Others argue that the system was so sophisticated and the oral knowledge so rich that it functioned like a spiritual algorithm long before computers were a thing. Either way, the effect is real. You feel known, slightly judged, but also forgiven. Ialode continues tossing and counting. Each time, she chants a line, sometimes a proverb, sometimes what sounds like gossip from the spirit world. You recognize one of the phrases from earlier in the grove. The turtle survives because it listens to its shadow. It's not about answers, it's about attention. She tells you a story next. It's about a boy who ignored his Ori, tried to be something he wasn't, and ended up wandering from village to village, selling fake healing potions. He finally found peace, not by changing his destiny, but by accepting it. The story ends with him planting a yam garden. Not heroic, not dramatic, or just honest. You notice that everyone who visits Ialode brings something: kola nuts, cloth, even jokes. Yes, jokes. The Yoruba believed laughter could feed the soul the way stew fed the body. And in this land where ancestors and Orisha walk close, joy wasn't frivolous, it was holy. Someone behind you laughs, a real, belly-deep, wheezing sort of laugh that makes the air warmer. A small boy falls over dramatically, pretending a goat has spoken his secrets aloud. The goat looks unimpressed. You glance back at the cowries, still lying on the mat like teeth knocked from the mouth of time. You're told that no two throws are the same. Each casting is a conversation. You don't always get answers, but you always get direction. And somehow that feels enough. Later, you find yourself alone by the river, watching your reflection ripple in the current. The moon dances on the surface like it's teasing you. You dip your fingers in and think about the times in your life you've ignored your inner voice. The times you knew better, but did it anyway. The river doesn't judge, it just flows. And somewhere nearby you hear a whisper, not in your ear, but in your chest. You already know. You breathe out slowly. The stars are still watching. The wind is quieter now, like it's tucking the night in. A frog croaks once, as if to say, "That's enough philosophy for today." You laugh. You rise. You walk back toward the village, each step slower, more deliberate. You feel the stone from the babalawo still in your pocket, warm now, like it's been listening. And behind you, on the riverbank, the cowries sit still on the mat, mouths open to the sky, silently telling anyone who listens. Your path is not a curse. It's a choice you forgot you made. The village hasn't changed much in the short time you were at the river, but your eyes have. What once looked like huts and dust and shadows now feels layered, like something painted on top of something older. Rituals drawn over memory, drawn over mystery. And just beyond the village square, tucked between a trio of palm trees, you hear the low, pulsing rhythm of a drum that doesn't seem to stop, even when no one's playing it. Tonight, you're here to witness something rare. An illness being treated not with medicine, but with music. Let's be clear. The Yoruba knew about herbs. They had decoctions for fever, poultices for swelling, powders for parasites. Their pharmacopoeia was deep and local, drawn from centuries of listening to plants. But sometimes, what ailed you didn't need leaves. It needed sound. You're ushered into a circular enclosure, lined with woven mats. A woman sits at the center, eyes shut, forehead slick with sweat. She's not flailing or possessed. She's listening. Surrounding her are 4 drummers, young men with bare chests, each seated before a carved dun-dun drum. The drums are hourglass-shaped, with chords that tighten and slacken to mimic human speech. Yes, these drums talk. The Yoruba call it drum language, and it's more than rhythm. It's communication. A skilled drummer can repeat proverbs, announce names, even insult someone's family lineage, all through percussion. Tonight, though, the drums are soothing, low, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a sleeping deity. You sit cross-legged behind one of the mats. Someone hands you a bundle of she leaves. For cooling, they whisper. You nod, though you're not sure if that means physically or spiritually. The woman in the center begins to hum, not a melody, but a vibration. Her shoulders move with the beat, and you realize she's not fighting the illness. She's dancing with it. Not physically, but energetically. She's giving it shape, naming it. And in Yoruba belief, what you can name, you can guide. Historians still debate whether these healing ceremonies were psychosomatic placebo rituals or deeply effective psychosocial care. Some anthropologists argue that the combination of community, rhythm, and story triggered real neurological responses. Others believe it was about dignity, giving illness a voice instead of hiding it. But there's no debate in this room. When the drummers shift tempo, the woman begins to speak. Softly. At first, nonsense, then names, then fragments of dreams, then a joke, a real one, something about a lizard who thought he was a god until he fell from a tree. Everyone laughs, even her. You feel goosebumps on your arms. Someone next to you explains. The spirit that caused her illness has been amused. It will leave now. You blink, that's it. No potions, no bleeding, no exile. Just laughter. Apparently, yes. The woman is helped to her feet, and though she's weak, there's a peace on her face you didn't see before. She holds a gourd of water in both hands, sips once, and pours the rest on the ground, an offering to the unseen. You wonder what would happen if someone brought this idea into a modern hospital, not just treating symptoms, but inviting them to dance, to speak, to laugh. What if migraines had names? What if grief could be hummed out of the body like steam? You don't have answers, but your bones feel looser, your breath deeper. Later, the drummers sit by a fire, their fingers still tapping unconsciously against their thighs. You ask one of them what it feels like to speak with a drum. He grins. It feels like telling the wind a secret and hearing it repeat it back. You lie down on the mat someone left for you. The stars above are framed by the circular opening in the thatched roof. You see a trail of smoke winding toward them like a prayer with no words. Before you sleep, someone places a small calabash by your head. Inside is a powder made from ground yam and crushed cola. In case the dream is strong, they say. You nod, not entirely sure if you're meant to eat it, inhale it, or simply let it guard you. Either way, you sleep, and in your dream, the drums continue. They don't chant or announce or threaten, they just listen. And in their silence, you feel something in you shift, like a locked window being opened by a breeze. You don't dream of witches, you dream of names. And in the distance, a talking drum calls yours. You wake before dawn, though you're not sure what exactly woke you. The air is thick, heavy with dew and incense smoke that seems to cling to your thoughts. Somewhere in the stillness, a drum echoes, but not one you can hear with your ears. This one seems to beat just under your skin, as if your body is remembering something it never learned. Today, you're going to witness something few outsiders have ever seen. An illness, not treated with fire or herbs, but with sound. Specifically, a disease that is believed to speak through a drum, not metaphorically, literally. It begins with a gathering. A woman named Aduni sits at the edge of the village, her back against a termite-mounded wall. She hasn't spoken in days. Her family believes she's been taken by a spirit, not possessed exactly, but caught in a conversation with something that doesn't have a mouth. She doesn't eat. She doesn't blink much, but her fingers twitch in rhythm like she's conducting a symphony only she can hear. Her family has summoned the Ayan, the sacred drummers descended from Sango's own musicians. These aren't party drummers. These are men with faces like river stones, quiet, focused, listening before they ever touch their instruments. When they arrive, no one claps, no one cheers. They just clear space, lay out their drums, and begin tuning the hideskins by firelight. The fire crackles like it's trying to warn you. What's about to happen is not for decoration. The drums begin low, slow, not quite a beat, more like a breath with muscle. Then, as the tempo lifts, you feel it. Words. Not in English, not in Yoruba, in something older, something instinctual. Your body tightens with a recognition you can't explain. The lead drummer wears red beads and a cloak lined with silver cowries. His hands blur. His feet shift. He begins to speak to the spirit believed to be troubling Aduni. Not scolding, not begging, just speaking, as if addressing a stubborn elder who's overstayed their welcome. Historians still debate whether the Yoruba considered these spiritual illnesses as real physiological issues or as symbolic imbalances. Some researchers argue that what looks like seizure or dissociation may have been understood as a spiritual message. Others claim the entire framework functioned like pre-modern psychotherapy, a communal way of making the unbearable bearable. You don't know what's true, but you can see this. Aduni is swaying now, not wildly, gently, like seaweed under a soft tide. Her fingers stop twitching. Her lips begin to move. And slowly, out of her throat comes a sound. Not a word, but a tone. Matching the drum exactly. The drummers shift instantly. The rhythm deepens, slows. You can feel it in your teeth. Someone leans toward you and whispers, "She's negotiating." What does that mean? Apparently, in the Yoruba worldview, a disease may be the result of disrespected harmony, a spirit who was ignored, an ancestor whose name was skipped during a festival, a taboo broken by accident. The illness is not the enemy, it's the alarm bell. And the drummers? They're here to listen to that alarm and speak back in kind. Suddenly, Aduni opens her eyes. She says a single word, "Ur." You don't know what it means. Later, someone tells you it's a name of the spirit, of the condition, of the cure. She's helped to her feet. Her family sings a short chorus, not of praise, but of thanks. Not for the drummers, with them, because this wasn't a performance, it was a dialogue. One of the Ayan sits beside you, his forehead glistening with sweat. You ask him if he always knows what the drum is saying. He shakes his head. Sometimes, he says, we just guess with rhythm. Sometimes the spirit corrects us. You laugh quietly. And if the spirit doesn't like it? He grins. Then it plays back, louder. That night, you lie on a mat under a reed roof. The sound of drums is gone now, but your bones feel like they're still humming. You wonder how many illnesses in your life, physical or otherwise, were just unplayed notes, unheard rhythms, unspoken stories knocking at your chest. You turn onto your side. You dream of a tree dancing, and a drum that smiles. You wake to the smell of palm oil and the faintest trace of something metallic, like rain on a bronze roof. It's still early, but the village is already alive. Children chasing goats, someone grinding yam with an old wooden pestle. And just beyond the market path, a group of elders sit beneath a frangipani tree, not speaking, just watching. You're told there's been a crime, but there's no constable here, no courtroom, no powdered wigs or stern judges, no gallows lurking behind the square. Instead, there's a statue, wooden, weather-worn, eyes closed, arms crossed, standing in the middle of the village clearing like it's listening or judging, or both. You approach carefully. The figure is tall, slightly bowed, with cracked paint and a small offering bowl at its feet. Its name is Orunmila, the Orisha of wisdom, fate, and divine memory. Today, it will decide who is telling the truth. The accuser, a young woman with her hair tightly wrapped in indigo cloth, claims her neighbor stole a sacred item from her late mother's shrine. A carved comb passed down 3 generations. The accused, a wiry man in a brown tunic, swears he never even touched it. No one raises their voice. There's no yelling, no threats, just silence. Because the statue is here. Now, in Western logic, this might sound absurd. A statue deciding guilt? But in the Yoruba worldview, objects carry presence, power, memory. This isn't just a wooden idol. It's a conduit, a still open ear between the visible and invisible realms. And in cases where evidence is scarce and emotion runs high, sometimes it's not about proof. It's about presence. You're told the process is simple. Both parties must place their hand on the statue's head and speak their version of the truth. If either lies, the consequences may not be immediate, but they will come. A dream, a sickness, a goat that refuses to produce milk. The signs will arrive. Historians still debate whether this form of spiritual arbitration was truly effective or simply a deterrent. Some suggest it was a psychological mechanism, believers too afraid to lie in front of what they considered divine presence. Others believe the rituals surrounding these statues channeled genuine social order and reduced false accusations. But again, you're not here to settle debates. You're here to feel it. The woman goes first. She places both hands gently on the statue's crown, closes her eyes, and says her piece. Her voice is steady, sorrowful. When she finishes, she steps back and kisses her right shoulder, a sign of trust. Then the man steps forward. He's less sure. You can see the tension in his shoulders. His fingers tremble as they touch the figure's brow. He starts to speak, stutters, pauses, then restarts. He ends quickly, steps away, does not kiss his shoulder. The air feels heavy now, like rain might fall even though the sky is clear. No verdict is announced, no punishment handed down. The statue does not move. But the village has heard. In the following days, you learn that the man left town. No one told him to. No one forced him. But sometimes silence speaks louder than judgment. The woman receives her comb back, delivered anonymously, wrapped in banana leaves, left on her doorstep. You wonder if this kind of justice might work in your world. A justice without spectacle, without cameras. Just truth, measured by presence and memory. That night, someone tells you a story. A long time ago, a boy was falsely accused of poisoning his friend. He swore on Orunmila that he was innocent. Years later, on his deathbed, the true culprit confessed. The boy had died young, but the truth had waited. And when it arrived, it was as sharp as a thorn and as quiet as dusk. You ask if the villagers believe the statue really knew. An old man nearby leans in and says, "Does the moon need to speak for you to feel watched?" You don't answer. You're already looking at the stars again. And the statue, still standing in the clearing, arms crossed, eyes closed, like it always knew. You're starting to accept that not everything here needs to be explained. That perhaps the Yoruba way of knowing, through feeling, through rhythm, through the weight of silence, is no less precise than anything carved into textbooks. Tonight, you're following a child. He couldn't be older than 10, but he walks with the certainty of someone who's been this way 1,000 times. He doesn't talk to you. He just points ahead toward a massive tree with a thick, braided trunk. Its roots rise above the earth like petrified waves, and its branches stretch so wide that even the moonlight refuses to pass through them. The boy stops, won't go further. It's the baobab tree. No one sleeps beneath it. No one dares build too close. You ask why. He shrugs. Ask it yourself. So you do, sort of. You step closer and listen. The wind doesn't move here. No insects chirp. It's still. And not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels like a warning. The bark is carved with old names. Some neat, some scratched like panic. At the base of the trunk is a cracked pot, half buried in dirt, filled with white feathers and red string. You ask someone later what it means. They sigh, as if you've asked something so obvious it's painful. That's where the whispers go. According to legend, the baobab holds memories that were never spoken aloud, fears that weren't confessed, apologies that came too late. When someone had something they couldn't say to another person, they whispered it to the tree. The tree, in turn, promised to carry it. But sometimes the tree speaks back. A woman tells you about her grandfather, who once spent a night under the baobab after an argument with his brother. He returned the next morning, white-haired and quiet, never spoke a harsh word again, never laughed either. Historians still debate whether the baobab's reputation as a spiritual node was tied to its biology. It can live for thousands of years, hold gallons of water in its trunk, and survive lightning strikes that fell lesser trees. Or perhaps its shape, stark and bulbous, invites imagination. Some say it looks like it was planted upside down, its roots reaching toward the sky. Others say it simply knows too much. Tonight, a ceremony is held nearby, not at the base, never that close, but within its sightline. A group of women gather in a half circle, each holding a clay pot filled with palm wine. They sing softly, swaying in rhythm. You're told they're offering thanks, not to the baobab, but through it, to whatever still listens in the soil beneath. At one point, a dog barks in the distance. Everyone freezes. One of the women murmurs something in Yoruba and tosses a pinch of chalk over her shoulder. The moment passes. The singing resumes. No one has slept near the tree in generations, but one man tried. He was a traveler, unfamiliar with local customs, who thought the shade would make a fine place to nap. By morning, he'd vanished, his belongings still neatly arranged, his walking stick leaning politely against the bark. No sign of struggle, just gone. You ask if they searched for him. Someone says, "We didn't need to." You sit just outside the tree's shadow, watching the moon finally break through a crack in the leaves. For a moment, it looks like the tree is weeping light. Then it passes. You wonder what would happen if people in your world had a place to put unsaid things. Not into a therapist's notes or a journal app, but into a living, breathing thing that doesn't interrupt, that doesn't give advice, that just holds it. You pick up a twig, scratch a symbol in the dirt. Not a name, not a wish, just a feeling. The wind picks up slightly, only slightly. You decide that's enough for tonight. And when you turn to go, you swear you hear something behind you. Not a voice, just a shift, like a tree remembering. Tonight, a woman is weeping beside a bowl of water. Not loud, not desperate. It's a quiet, crumpled sound, like a bird trying to breathe through a cracked beak. The bowl sits on the floor of her hut, carefully placed on a square mat made of woven raffia. The water inside is still, so still it looks like polished glass. A candle flickers beside it. You're told not to speak. She's a widow. Her husband passed 2 months ago, and tonight marks the end of her official mourning. But the tears, it seems, haven't received the memo. She's doing a ritual passed down from her grandmother and hers before that. It's called Omi Okuta, the water of stones. She places 3 small stones in the bowl. Each represents a question. Did you forgive me? Do you still hear me? Did I bury you well? She waits and watches. Nothing stirs at first. The candle crackles. The water reflects her face, soft, lined, strong. Then a ripple. Just one. Not from wind, not from movement. Just there. Like the bowl blinked. You glance at the others in the room. No one reacts, because this is normal. At least here. In Yoruba tradition, the boundary between the living and the dead isn't a wall. It's a doorway left slightly ajar. And in moments like these, when grief becomes an invitation, the dead sometimes step close, not to haunt, but to humble. Historians still debate whether these rituals were emotional catharsis cloaked in spiritual tradition, or if they truly believed the dead could interact with the world of the living. Some anthropologists lean toward symbolism, water as a metaphor for memory, for mourning, for release. Others argue that the Yoruba worldview genuinely accommodates such visitations, not as superstition, but as a continuation of community. Either way, you feel it. The heaviness in the air, the warmth in the silence. The woman begins to speak, not in complete sentences, but in fragments, memories, regrets. A story about a mango tree they planted together. The way he used to hum when sharpening his knife. How he always left too much pepper in the soup. You realize she's not seeking answers. She's offering presence. In Yoruba belief, the dead are not gone. They become egungun, ancestral spirits who watch, guide, and occasionally meddle in family affairs. But only if remembered, only if invited. The bowl is a phone line. The stones, ringtones. Later that night, you sit beside the woman. She pours the water out gently at the base of a flowering shrub. "He liked to nap under this tree," she says, almost smiling. "Always snored like a lion trying not to be noticed." You both laugh quietly. Then she looks at you. "Will you remember this?" You nod. Because you will. That night, in your own small hut, someone has left a bowl for you, empty, waiting. You fill it with water, unsure if you're doing it right, but it doesn't matter. The act is the prayer. You stare into the surface, at your own reflection, and you whisper the name of someone you miss. The water stays still. Then, a flicker. Maybe it was the candle, maybe not. You don't check, you don't speak, you just sit with it. And somewhere, far beyond your roof, a name is heard. It's been quiet all day. The kind of quiet that makes you suspicious. No squawking chickens, no shouted greetings, not even the rhythmic thump of someone pounding yam. The village feels like it's holding its breath. Then the music starts. It's not loud, it's not fast. It begins like a joke. Soft flutes, mismatched drums, and what sounds like a goat sneezing in time with the beat. You follow the sound past the empty square, around the back of the market huts, and there they are, dancers, masked, twirling, tripping. Yes, tripping on purpose. You're witnessing the Galede festival, a celebration unlike any other, a ritual of masks, mischief, and meaning, held in honor of the Aje, the mysterious spiritual mothers of Yoruba belief. And unlike most festivals around the world, meant to avoid the wrath of invisible powers, this one tries to make them laugh. A masked dancer, wearing a comically oversized wooden headpiece shaped like a mother-in-law with one eyebrow raised, stumbles dramatically, flailing his arms. The crowd erupts into polite laughter. An old man nearby slaps his knee and mutters something you don't understand, but the joy is unmistakable. You lean in and ask, "Are they mocking the age?" The woman beside you shakes her head. No, they're entertaining them, like grandchildren showing off. That changes everything. See, the AJ aren't just feared, they're respected. They represent power, yes, but also creation, protection, judgment, and yes, chaos. But unlike European witches, who were pushed into darkness and hunted down, the Yoruba found a different approach. Inclusion through humor. If the spiritual mothers can laugh, they won't be offended. If they're pleased, they'll protect the village. If they're delighted, maybe they'll even bless the harvest. Historians still debate the exact origins of Gelede. Some trace it to agricultural rites, others to ancestral worship. Some say it began as a way to honor women's spiritual power in a society that balanced gender roles more flexibly than we might assume. What's certain is that the festival reflects a worldview where laughter isn't escape, it's engagement. And these masks, they're alive. You move closer to one, a carved wooden face with wide eyes, bright paint, and a headpiece that looks like a cooking pot with legs. You ask someone what it means. He shrugs. Depends who's dancing it. Each dancer breathes new intention into the mask. One might turn it into a gossiping auntie, another into a forgetful farmer, another into a spirit who once traded lightning for laughter. Tonight, you see a dancer dressed as a chicken, running from a tiny masked child who wields a carved yam like a sword. The chicken slips, lands in a tub of flour, and erupts into coughing. The crowd gasps, then roars with laughter. A moment later, someone whispers, "Did you see that?" You didn't. Apparently, during the commotion, a sudden breeze lifted only one mask from the ground and spun it upright. No hands, no tricks, just wind. You're told it means the AJ are pleased. The music builds now, faster, wilder. Bells jingle from dancers' ankles. Someone throws a handful of chalk into the air, and it settles on the crowd like stardust. The masked dancers form a circle, and one by one, they freeze in ridiculous poses. A bird pooping on a royal guard, a traitor hiding coins in her hair, a goat rejecting a marriage proposal. Yes, really. You're laughing now too. Not just politely, deeply. That kind of laugh that makes your stomach cramp and your cheeks hurt. You're laughing beside elders, children, ancestors who've shown up in dreams, and spirits who may or may not be hiding behind the masks. And for a moment, you realize this isn't about mockery. It's about balance. The Yoruba understood something that much of the world still struggles with. You don't have to banish power to stay safe. Sometimes you honor it. Sometimes you charm it. Sometimes you just make it laugh. The music slows. The dancers bow. The masks are removed carefully, respectfully. You feel the shift in energy. The spirits have been fed, not with blood, not with fire, but with joy. That night, you find yourself smiling for no reason. You think about all the masks in your own life, the ones you wear, the ones others try to place on you. And you wonder what would happen if, just once, you wore them for fun, just to see if the world might laugh with you. You fall asleep to the sound of giggling outside your hut. Not human, not quite, just pleased. You awaken to singing, soft and low, like someone humming into a clay jar. You sit up slowly, the mat beneath you creaking like an old door. Outside, the air is heavy with dew, and the smell of palm oil stew drifting lazily through the village. But the singing doesn't come from the kitchens. It comes from beyond the huts, from the woods, where the trees lean in just a little too closely. Someone takes your hand before you can ask, leading you quietly down a narrow path. "You should see this," they whisper, before the spirit child decides to leave again. You blink, still half asleep, but you follow. You're brought to a low hut on the village edge. The doors open. Inside, a small mat, a sleeping baby, and a candle that's almost gone. The child doesn't cry, doesn't fuss, just lies there with wide, impossibly still eyes. The mother sits beside him, chanting under her breath and tying thin red strings around the baby's wrists and ankles. You've met an abiku. To the Yoruba, abiku are spirit children, those born only to die and return to the spirit world, then be born again into suffering families, again and again, causing fresh grief each time. Sometimes they come back with birthmarks or old injuries that no one can explain. Sometimes they tell stories they couldn't possibly know. And sometimes they just vanish. You're told that this baby has already left twice, once in the womb, once at 8 days old. Now he's back for now. The mother doesn't wail or protest. She sings to him, but the lyrics are odd. Not lullabies, they're threats, warnings. "If you leave me again," she chants, "I will chain your ankles in iron. I will call the spirit tree and bury your name in its bark." You recoil at first. How can someone speak so harshly to a baby? But then you understand. These aren't threats of punishment. They're pleas for love. This is how Yoruba mothers fight for their children when medicine isn't enough. When grief has set up a permanent room in their chests, the threats are love in armor. Historians still debate the nature of the abiku belief. Was it a psychological coping mechanism for high infant mortality? A spiritual interpretation of genetic illness or infection? Or something older, harder to classify? An acknowledgement that some souls may simply not be meant to stay. Either way, it gives shape to sorrow, and that's something. You watch as the mother prepares a charm, a tiny packet of herbs, cloth, and white chalk. She rubs it gently on the baby's feet and whispers something so soft even the candle seems to lean in. A woman nearby tells you about her sister, another abiku, gone by 3. She says the family never spoke of her again. But sometimes, at night, her name appears, written in ash on the kitchen wall. You don't ask if it's true. You just believe her. Later, a diviner comes to visit the baby. He doesn't perform a dramatic ritual. He simply asks the child's ori, his inner spirit, if he's willing to stay this time. Then he nods and leaves, offering nothing more than, "Give him bitter leaf in his bath, and remind him often that he is wanted." That's the real heart of it. The abiku are not cursed. They're not evil. They're simply unsure. And Yoruba tradition, with all its drums and divinations, has one goal: to convince them that this world, despite its pain, despite its storms, is worth staying in. You walk back to your hut slowly. The baby's eyes follow you, not like a normal baby, like someone who's been watching you longer than you've been alive. You nod at him. He does not nod back, but his fingers curl slightly like they're holding on. That night, you light a candle near your sleeping mat. You don't know why. You just feel like something might want to know that you're glad it stayed. And as the flame flickers low, you hear a whisper, not in the room, but in your chest. "I'll try." You spend the morning helping an old man fetch water. He's lean, wiry, and always half laughing at things no one else seems to notice. Like how the rooster refuses to crow unless someone's looking, or how his walking stick sometimes forgets which way to lean. He hums as he walks, tapping his cane against the ground with each step, like he's keeping time with the earth. But today he's not humming as much. He's telling you about a tree, a very stubborn tree. At the edge of the village, past the yam fields and a long ridge of clay mounds, stands an ancient tree with smooth gray bark and twisted limbs that reach out like frozen dancers. The villagers call it Odan Alaye, the tree that refuses to die. Lightning struck it years ago, twice. Once during a storm so fierce it ripped the roof off the chief's hut. The bolt hit squarely down the middle, splitting the trunk like a butcher's axe. But the tree didn't fall, didn't blacken, didn't even smoke. The leaves remained green, unbothered, as if the sky had merely tapped it on the shoulder and apologized afterward. The old man chuckles. "We took it as a sign The tree isn't from here, it came before us. You ask if that means it's sacred. He just grins. Or stubborn. He leads you to it. You expect something grand, towering, but it's not. The tree isn't massive, it's rooted. There's a difference. Its branches stretch in odd directions, as if trying to touch distant memories. Around its base are offerings, kola nuts, coins, and small white feathers. Someone has tied red thread around one of its limbs. You reach out to touch it. Don't. The word comes soft, firm. You pull your hand back. Apparently, touching is reserved for those who've made the proper introductions. The villagers believe the tree houses a spirit. Not a god, not an orisha, but something quieter, older. Perhaps an ancestor who didn't want to leave. Perhaps the memory of a time when the land breathed differently. A few years back, a fire swept through the area. It consumed grass huts, wood piles, even the yam shed. But when it reached the tree, the flames bent around it, literally curved away. No scorch marks, no ash. Historians still debate whether these invincible trees were the result of particular species traits: moist bark, deep roots, fire-resistant structures. But the villagers don't care. To them, the science only confirms what they already knew. Some trees choose to stay. Later, you sit beneath it, just outside the red thread perimeter. The air is cooler here, still. You swear the wind moves differently, like it's brushing up against something that doesn't quite belong. A child approaches with a bowl of water and places it at the base. Then she whispers something, so soft you can't hear it. A moment later, a breeze passes through. Not wild, just enough to rustle the leaves like laughter. You ask the child what she said. She shrugs. I was just asking it not to go away. You smile, and a thought enters your head, uninvited. How many things in your life have you lost because you forgot to ask them to stay? You lie down on the grass, eyes on the branches. They move gently, not in rhythm with the other trees around them. Almost as if the wind negotiates with this one. You drift. You dream of a hand made of bark, of roots growing out of your feet, anchoring you in stories older than your name. When you wake, a single leaf has fallen beside you, not on you, beside you. You take it carefully and place it in your pocket, not as a souvenir, as a reminder. Some things don't burn because they know who they are, and they're waiting for you to remember the same. You're drawn to the market today, though it doesn't feel like a place where you'd find answers. Just gossip, fish, and the unmistakable smell of fermented cassava. But the air hums differently here. Laughter comes quicker. Arguments end with slaps on the back. And above it all, the scent of something slightly spicy. Ararodo peppers, sliced open and left to tease everyone's nose. You trail behind an old woman with a basket on her head and bare feet that seem to know every crack in the ground. She walks not toward the food stalls, but toward a shaded corner, where the stalls lean together like gossipy neighbors. Here, the goods aren't meant for the living, they're for ancestors. It's called Oja Egungun, the ancestors' market. It doesn't have a sign. It doesn't need one. Everyone knows it's there. You'll find things here that seem mundane. Bitter leaf bundles, carved combs, slivers of white cloth, bundles of chalk, cowries tied with palm fronds. But these items aren't for use. They're messages. Each one tells a story or seals a promise or nudges a memory into the land of the dead. You watch a young woman barter for dried beans, her voice soft and almost melodic. But instead of taking the beans home, she walks them to a tree stump near the market edge and places them carefully on a white cloth. Then she whispers something and walks away. You ask someone what that was about. She's feeding her aunt, they say, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. But her aunt's dead. So, don't you feed your memories? You blink. That's not how markets work where you're from. But here, every item has two prices: the earthly cost and the spiritual intention. You can buy yams for dinner or yams for forgiveness. You can buy soap for your skin or soap to cleanse the stain of an old insult whispered at a funeral. Historians still debate how much of this is performative versus belief-driven. Some claim the ancestor market serves as public therapy, rituals that allow closure without confrontation. Others argue that the transactions reflect a deep, enduring sense of reciprocity between the living and the dead. Either way, it's busy. You follow a trader named Bissy, who specializes in what she calls restless goods, items with stories. She shows you a clay pipe wrapped in red string. This belonged to a man who lied to his brother on his deathbed, she says. He sold it, but it came back 3 times. She shrugs. Some things don't like to be forgotten. You ask if she believes in curses. No, she says, just unfinished conversations. Nearby, a child buys a mirror, not to use, to bury. Apparently, his grandfather appeared in a dream with blood on his face. Not a bad sign, just messy. The mirror is meant to help the ancestor see himself clearly, so he doesn't return confused. You make your way through the crowd, wondering what you might buy here. A bowl to pour old feelings into. A cloth to wrap around an apology you never got. A feather to send a message backward in time. You reach into your pocket and touch the leaf from the unburned tree. Maybe that's enough. Later, you help an old man carry a packet of salt to the shrine outside his home. It's for his wife, who passed 5 years ago but still hasn't visited his dreams. She was stubborn, he says. Even in spirit, she needs coaxing. He leaves the salt with a folded note, tied with thread, tucked under a small gourd lid. You don't ask what the note says. Some markets trade in silence too. That night, you sit beside the dying fire with a bowl of dried okra in your lap. You didn't buy it. Someone gave it to you, smiling strangely. For balance, they said. You don't know what to do with it. So you do nothing. You just hold it and imagine all the people you wish you could still feed, just one more time. The fire pops. The okra shifts slightly in your bowl. And far away, someone's hunger fades, if only for a moment. This morning, the village is different. Not in sound or scent or even sunlight, but in pace. Everything is slower. Not lazy, just careful. As if the ground itself has asked for silence. You're told a sacred procession will pass through today. But there are no chariots, no armored guards, just one man, and his feet must never touch the earth. That man is the king, but not just any king, the Oba. And today, he must walk above the ground or risk offending the Orisha. You see him before you hear him. He's tall, not just in stature but in presence, draped in layers of indigo, crimson, and gold-threaded fabric. His face is partially veiled in lace. His wrists clink softly with bronze bangles, and around him walk 4 barefoot attendants, each holding a corner of the wide cloth that forms a floating rug beneath his feet. Wherever he steps, the cloth moves with him. His feet never touch dirt. You ask someone, "Is the ground cursed?" They shake their head. "No, it's too holy." You see, the Oba is more than a ruler. He's a living axis where heaven and earth meet. His body is not just flesh. It's a vessel for history, for Orisha, for the collective memory of the people. And while he is deeply revered, he is also tightly bound by ritual. He can't eat in public, can't sneeze where others might hear, can't walk like you and me, not on the naked earth, because every step would be like pressing muddy footprints into a sacred scroll. Historians still debate the origins of this practice. Some trace it to ancient If, the spiritual cradle of Yoruba civilization, where kings were considered semi-divine. Others believe it emerged as a political strategy, distancing the ruler from the people not to dominate them, but to protect the fragile harmony between spiritual realms. But today, you don't need theories. You can feel it. Every eye in a village turns downward as the Oba passes, not in shame, in awe, in protection. A child starts to run into the path. His mother catches him gently, without scolding, and hums a calming tune. Even the goats seem to quiet as he nears. The cloth beneath the Oba is immaculate, stitched by women who fasted while sewing it. You're told it's burned after the procession ends, never reused, never washed, because what it holds is too sacred to scrub clean. You watch the Oba approach a shrine. He stops, lifts his arms. An elder steps forward and anoints his forehead with white chalk. The king does not speak. His silence is the sermon. And then a breeze. The cloth beneath him lifts slightly, not blown, but lifted, like the earth exhaling beneath his soles. Later, you're told this happens every year, always the same route, always the same rituals. But something different always occurs. A butterfly that lands on the Oba's shoulder, a sudden rain that falls only where he stands, or a cloud shaped like a crown that hovers above the shrine. These are not signs of divinity, they say. They're reminders. You ask one woman what happens if the Oba steps directly on the ground. She grimaces. It has happened once, and that's all she says. That night, the Oba disappears back into his palace, hidden behind tall walls, into a life that isn't really a life, but a duty wrapped in centuries. You sit near the edge of the path, tracing your fingers along the pressed grass where the cloth passed. It feels no different, but you feel different. You realize that this society didn't need grand punishments or divine threats to keep people in awe. They had structure, a choreography of respect. And by lifting one man's feet off the ground, they reminded everyone what it means to walk with reverence. You look down at your own feet, still dusty, still mortal, but maybe just a little more careful now. Night has fallen again, and the village seems to exhale with relief. The fireflies are out, thousands of tiny lanterns drifting through the tall grasses like spirits with no destination. And tonight, for the first time, you're invited to the mask house. It's not marked, it's not grand, just a round, silent hut with walls of red clay and a single narrow doorway. You duck inside, and instantly the air changes. Cooler, still. Dust hangs suspended in the lamplight like pollen from old stories. The room is lined with shelves, and on every shelf, masks. Some are long and narrow, carved from dark wood, their features exaggerated. Bulging eyes, long noses, crooked mouths. Others are smooth and simple, almost childlike, but each one seems to breathe. Tonight, you'll witness a ceremony, but first, you're told the rules. No questions while the masks are worn. No laughter if the mask looks at you. And above all, don't touch a mask that's still warm. You nod. The room nods back. As the crowd gathers outside, the drummers begin. Not loud, not yet. Just a low pulse, like a distant heartbeat growing bolder. Then the first dancer enters. He's wearing a tall crimson mask with antelope horns and a twisted grin. The crowd erupts, not in fear, but recognition. This is Rocco, the spirit of foolish bravery, the kind that jumps into a river without checking for crocodiles, the kind that shouts answers before hearing the question. He leaps, stumbles, lands in a pile of ash, sneezes theatrically, and the children roar with laughter. But then, the second mask enters. This one is white, smooth, almost featureless, except for its eyes, which are ringed in black and shaped like half moons. It doesn't dance, it glides, and as it passes, the laughter dies. You feel your spine straighten without meaning to. This is Agbone, the silent one, the mask that represents memory. Not your memory, ancestral memory. The kind that whispers warnings when you're about to repeat a mistake your great-grandfather already made. The dancers move around each other in a slow spiral. The drummers pick up speed. And soon, the entire village square becomes a moving mosaic of cloth, wood, sweat, and dust. No one speaks. No one needs to, because the masks speak. Historians still debate whether the masks were truly believed to be inhabited by spirits or simply artistic metaphors. Some argue the wearers underwent trance states, allowing Orisha to use their bodies like temporary houses. Others believe the drama served to re-teach moral lessons in an unforgettable way, through fear, humor, and awe. But tonight, you stop wondering, because one of the masks turns and looks at you, not through you, at you. A blue mask, with tears carved into its cheeks and feathers framing its head like a sorrowful halo. You don't know what it means. You don't need to. The dancer approaches slowly, places one hand on your shoulder, and then moves on. Later, someone tells you, that mask only shows up when someone far from home is ready to return. You laugh awkwardly. I'm not ready to go back. They smile. It's not about geography. That night, the masks are returned to the hut, carefully, respectfully, each placed back in its cradle and covered in white cloth. But the heat from them still radiates, like they haven't quite finished being alive. You sit just outside the doorway, watching the last dancer wipe sweat from his eyes. You ask, what does it feel like inside the mask? He shrugs, like dreaming, but everyone else is dreaming with you. Before you leave, The elder hands you a tiny token, a carved sliver of wood shaped like the mask that looked at you. "Keep it under your pillow," she says. "If it moves by morning, listen to what it's trying to say." You nod, trying not to let the weight of the night settle too deeply on your shoulders. But it does, because sometimes a face isn't a face. It's a story still breathing. It's nearly midnight, and the air feels dense, like it's holding its breath again. The stars tonight are sharp, unflickering. You hear the rustle of dry leaves, the hush of someone sweeping a courtyard with deliberate care, and somewhere in the distance, the faint whisper of a name not meant to be spoken aloud. You're being led to meet a group of women. They don't have titles. They don't wear special robes. They simply sit in a circle beneath the iru tree, whispering into their hands. These are the ones who curse with their breath. But don't panic. They're not witches, not in the stories you've heard. They're not twisted or wicked or hiding under stairwells. These women are honored, feared, yes, respected, absolutely. But only fools would call them witches. Here, they're known simply as Awan Iya, the mothers. They're guardians of unseen balance. Think of them like the immune system of the spiritual world. When a chief forgets his promises, when a family neglects the dead, when a man hoards more than his fair share of yam or goats, these women notice. And when they breathe, things change. One woman leans close to a pot of soup bubbling on a small fire. She exhales into it, slowly, deliberately. Then she places the lid on top, seals it with red string, and nods. "Anyone who eats this," she murmurs, "will remember what they forgot to say." You blink. "That's a curse?" She grins. "A correction. These breath curses aren't about revenge. They're about recall. Forgetting your obligations can bring imbalance to a village. So these women, those trusted enough to carry that power, simply remind people. Sometimes through illness, sometimes through shame, sometimes through a dream so vivid it leaves you speechless for days. Historians still debate whether these women held formalized spiritual roles or if their influence was more informal, based on reputation, fear, and centuries of oral lore. Some scholars describe them as matriarchal regulators, enforcing moral codes through passive power. Others insist they were protectors of the old ways, preserving wisdom through whispered justice. Either way, you don't want to be on the wrong end of their attention. One story floats your way tonight. A trader who cheated a widow in the market. She came to these women with no money, no family, just a tear and a small bag of charcoal. They said nothing, simply took the charcoal, breathed on it, and placed it beneath a palm tree. The trader's wares began to rot. Not immediately, just one by one, until he returned to the widow with trembling hands and repaid her with double. The curses weren't fatal, just persuasive. You ask why it's done through breath. An old woman, her lips stained with cola, replies, "Because the mouth gives life, and must also remind life how to behave." You sit for a while, listening. One of the women takes your hand. Her skin is warm, her fingers calloused from years of grinding peppers and pulling weeds. She presses something into your palm, a bundle of dry leaves tied with thread. "Steep this when you can't remember what you meant to do," she says. You don't ask how she knows. Later, back in your hut, you unwrap the bundle. The scent is strong, earthy, bitter, a little sweet. You place it beside your sleeping mat, unsure whether to brew it or dream beside it. As you drift to sleep, you hear a faint sigh, not your own. Just outside your hut, someone exhales slowly, and every shadow in the room seems to straighten just a little, as if it remembers. You wake to thunder, but there's no rain, just a single sharp crack overhead, then silence. A few moments later, a child runs past your hut, barefoot, trailing chalk dust and laughter. You follow without asking why. You've learned by now that curiosity isn't questioned here, it's expected. You find the child standing at the village crossroads, holding a small calabash filled with white powder. He looks up at the sky with a grin and begins drawing on the ground. Symbols, circles, a jagged line that looks suspiciously like a lightning bolt. "Storm's coming," he says. "But it's dry," you reply. He shrugs, "Not for long." Then he blows gently across the chalk pattern, and the wind, quiet all morning, suddenly picks up. You are witnessing one of the Yoruba's lesser-known rituals, weather negotiation. Yes, negotiation. Not with meteorology, but with the Orisha, specifically Oya, the Orisha of wind, change, and sudden storms. She's fierce, protective, unpredictable. And today, the village would rather she not flood the yam fields. So they're asking politely, but creatively. The children are the first to act. They draw her favorite symbols in the dust: corkscrews, feathers, spirals, anything that might catch her eye. One girl uses cassava paste to sketch a river bending away from the village. Another arranges cowries in a circle and whispers the names of birds she's never seen but swears live in the clouds. Adults pretend not to watch, but one by one, they begin to add their own offerings. A woman places 7 feathers at the base of a tree. A hunter places his hunting cap upside down on a rock, muttering, "Just one dry night, please." The most delicate ritual comes last. A boy walks to the center of the square with a gourd full of river water. He dips his fingers in and flicks the droplets skyward 3 times, then places a piece of chalk on his tongue and lets it dissolve. This, they say, sweetens the wind. Historians still debate whether these rituals had any observable effect on weather patterns. Some argue that the practices served psychological purposes, giving villagers a sense of control in a world dominated by chaotic forces. Others suggest that these traditions encoded meteorological wisdom, patterns of wind, heat, animal behavior, and seasonal rhythms embedded in ritual. But today, it's not about proof. It's about participation. The wind picks up again, not harsh, just enough to lift skirts and stir the palm leaves overhead. "See?" says the chalk-covered child. "She's listening." You ask if Oya is dangerous. He frowns. Only when people forget how to ask. Later, an elder tells you a story of the year they didn't perform the chalk rites. Everyone was busy preparing for a royal wedding. Oya came in the night, a storm that cracked 3 trees and blew the chief's roof halfway to the river. No one was hurt, but every rooster laid down and refused to crow for 3 days. Since then, the children always draw. You walk to the edge of the village and look up. The sky is dark in patches, but not angry, more like curious. You take a piece of chalk from your pouch and draw your own mark in the dirt. Just a spiral. No reason. Just instinct. A breeze brushes your ear. You smile. That night, not a single drop of rain falls, but thunder rolls gently in the distance, like someone clearing their throat but deciding not to speak. And the village sleeps peacefully, knowing they asked, and that someone up there answered, "Not tonight. Tonight, you're invited to a gathering, not a feast, not a performance, something quieter, more intimate. You're told it's a justice ritual, but not the kind you've come to expect. There are no chains, no shouting, no guards standing by, just a calabash. A man stands in the center of a half circle of elders, hands trembling slightly as he holds the bowl. Inside it, a dark, bitter liquid made from bark, kola nut, and something else no one names. He's accused of theft, a goat gone missing. No one saw him take it. No one saw him sell it. But the signs point his way. He says he's innocent. The elders say, "Then drink." This is not punishment. This is proof. It's called Mimu Gba, the calabash test. He lifts the bowl to his lips. Everyone leans forward. Not because they want to see him punished, but because they want to see if the truth will keep him whole. Yoruba justice didn't always rely on evidence in the Western sense. It relied on balance, on the idea that falsehood disrupts the harmony between people and the world around them. The calabash doesn't poison, it reveals. That's the belief. If he's lying, the bitter brew may cause stomach pain, fever, even hallucinations. If he's truthful, he'll feel nothing but bitterness and a deep, cleansing sleep. He drinks, slowly, wipes his mouth, then waits. Historians still debate the actual ingredients of this traditional concoction. Some liken it to a mild emetic, others to a ritual placebo that works by psychological suggestion. But many accounts agree. In a tightly bonded community where everyone shares water, food, and ancestry, the fear of spiritual imbalance was far more powerful than any physical toxin. The man sits. 5 minutes pass. Then 10. His breathing slows. He does not collapse. He doesn't sweat. He just sits, calm. An elder nods. He tells the truth. The accused man exhales and begins to cry, not from fear, but from the relief of being seen, of being believed. It's a quiet, shaking cry. A child brings him a cloth. A woman offers him roasted yam. The goat is never found, but the village is at peace. You're told that years ago, another man failed the calabash test. He'd lied about damaging a neighbor's shrine. Within a day, he broke out in a strange rash and confessed. Not under duress, not for reward, just to make the rash stop. He apologized. The shrine was repaired. The rash vanished. Justice, in Yoruba tradition, is not about vengeance, it's about repair. You ask an elder what happens if someone refuses the drink. They already know, she says. Later that night, you're handed your own calabash. No accusation, no suspicion. Just curiosity. Drink, they say, if you've ever lied to yourself. You freeze. The village watches, not judging. Just waiting. You raise the bowl. Sip. Bitterness floods your mouth, not painful, just honest. And somehow you feel lighter, like something tight in your chest has unclenched. You hand the bowl back. No one says anything, but someone offers you water. Another offers a mat to sit. You're part of the circle now. That night, you dream of a river turning clear after a stone is lifted from its center. And in the morning, the goat returns on its own. At first, you think it's a joke. You step into a village at dusk, just as the sun drips behind the hills like melted gold, and something feels wrong, off. Not the people. They're smiling, carrying baskets, lighting oil lamps, but there's something missing. Then it hits you. There are no shadows, not a single one. You glance down. The ground under your feet is lit just enough to expect a faint silhouette, but nothing. You lift your arm, still nothing. A child runs past, giggling, casting no shadow. A woman brushes her hair in the doorway of her hut. Her hands move, her hair gleams in the light, but there's no darkness behind her. You whisper to your guide, "What is this?" He just says, "We don't talk about it after sundown," and keeps walking. You follow, heart thudding softly. Every step feels like stepping into something that isn't quite there. The shadows aren't hiding. They've simply left. Later, around a fire that somehow glows without casting anything on the ground, you learn the story. The village is under what they call a spiritual agreement. Years ago, no one agrees on how many, something terrible happened here. A betrayal so deep, so sharp, that the village elders decided not to punish the body, but the memory. And so the shadows were asked to leave. A diviner sealed the agreement with ground chalk and a whisper, and from that day forward, no shadow stayed past twilight. You ask what the betrayal was. The elders shake their heads. If we remembered, the curse would break. It's not superstition, they say, it's survival. Historians still debate the meaning of such tales. Some consider them metaphors for collective trauma, an ancient way to encode memory in the landscape without triggering shame. Others see it as a cautionary myth. Forget the crime or relive the pain. But when you're standing in a warm village surrounded by dancing, singing, cooking, and no shadows, it's hard to stay skeptical. You notice how careful everyone is. No yelling, no insults, not even playful ones. Even the goats seem calmer. It's as if the absence of shadows has made people softer, like they're afraid that too much darkness inside might bring the real ones back. A young woman pulls you aside. She tells you that children born here are taught early to be careful with their emotions. Even our sadness must be folded gently, she says. She shows you a cloth square where she's embroidered a poem, not to be read aloud, but to catch her sorrow before bed. Every new moon, she burns the cloth and starts again. You ask if she misses having a shadow. She shrugs, sometimes, especially on full moons. You sleep in a guest hut. The lamp flickers on the wall, but nothing dances behind it. You miss your shadow more than you thought you would, not because of fear, because of proof. The simple comfort of knowing I am here and I leave a mark. That night, your dreams feel longer, not darker, just quieter. You dream of your shadow climbing a tree, waiting for you. In the morning, the sun rises, and suddenly the world is whole again. Your hand stretches across the mat, and there it is, your shadow, curled up beside you like a pet returning home. You sigh in relief. But before you leave, you turn back to the village square, and you notice, even in daylight, some of the elders still cast nothing at all. You're handed a name today, not one to call out loud, not one to write down, a secret name. It's whispered to you by an old woman with cloud-colored hair and eyes like cooled ash. She takes your hand, places it on a stone bowl filled with rainwater, and murmurs something that sounds like wind curling through tall grass. Then she says, "This is the name your bones remember." You try to repeat it. She shakes her head. "No, child, you don't speak it, you carry it." In Yoruba belief, every person has more than one name. There's the name your parents gave you, loud and public. The name the market knows, the one the gods hear in ritual. But there's another, the name the ancestors use, the one only spoken in prayer, in dream, or when the body is close to dying. It's your Oruko Amutorunwa, the name brought from heaven. And today, you've been trusted with yours. You walk the rest of the day slightly dazed. It's like discovering you've always had a second heartbeat and only just now noticed it. You keep thinking of moments in your life when you almost heard it. Those seconds before sleep, the quiet after grief, the strange calm before a storm. Historians still debate whether these secret names were meant to protect against spiritual interference, like passwords between soul and spirit, or if they functioned more symbolically, reminding the individual of their destiny and divine source. Some anthropologists connect them to naming rituals in other African cultures, where names are used to speak identity into existence. But here, the explanation is simpler. Without your true name, someone tells you, you can get lost even to yourself. You're shown a small shrine, just a stone circle under a lean-to roof, barely noticeable. Inside it sits a clay figure, faceless, wrapped in cloth and string. Each piece represents someone's hidden name. Every year, during a festival, people gather here and whisper their secret names into the clay, not to change them, but to realign with them. You're invited to do the same. You kneel, you lean close. The clay smells like rain and charcoal. You don't speak the name out loud, you just breathe it. And in that moment, something inside you clicks, like a door in your chest unlocking a little wider. A child nearby sees your expression and nods sagely. Sometimes when people remember their true name, she says, their dreams become easier to understand. You smile. That night, you sit around a fire with a small group. Each person takes turns sharing a memory, not from this life, but from a dream that felt like it belonged to an ancestor. One woman describes being a blacksmith, shaping metal with hands she doesn't have. A man talks about a river he's never seen, but that shows up every full moon with the sound of drums. You listen, and then it's your turn. You open your mouth and realize the memory has always been there. A field, a storm, a goat with one horn, a name you almost forgot. And now you remember it. No one claps, no one nods, but you feel something press gently against your back, like an old friend you didn't know was missing. You sleep deeply that night and dream of your name whispered in a room full of mirrors, none of which show your face, but all of them bow. The villagers are whispering tonight, not in fear, more like a collective unease. Children are kept close, goats tied more tightly, firewood stacked higher than usual. There's a kind of tension in the air, the way people breathe shallower when they sense something coming, even if they don't have the words for it. You ask what's wrong. They don't answer directly, but one word floats through the air like the smell of smoke before you see the fire. Ekuro. You hear it again and again. Eventually, someone explains, a one-eyed goat was seen at the edge of the village. You raise an eyebrow, and he leans in. It's not the first time. There's a story here, one whispered rather than written, about a goat with one eye that walks in circles during the full moon. Not every full moon, only the ones that follow a broken promise. The goat doesn't bleat. It doesn't eat. It simply walks. Always the same path. Always anti-clockwise. Always around the shrine of the ancestors. No one follows it. No one touches it. You're told it started generations ago when a chief lied during a land dispute. He swore on his ancestors, took land that wasn't his, and built his compound wide and proud. That very night, the goat appeared. One eye, one horn, circling, silent. The chief ignored it. He died within a month, but the goat remained. And now it returns, sometimes years apart, always when someone's oath is quietly rotting at the edge of the village. Tonight is one of those nights. You're brought to a rooftop for a clearer view. The moon hangs fat and gold over the palm trees, and there, in the clearing near the shrine, you see it. A pale goat, one eye reflecting the firelight like an ember. No rope, no collar, just movement, steady, predictable, intentional. You shiver. Not out of fear, out of recognition. Everyone here has done something, or failed to do something, and the goat's presence makes all of it feel seen. You ask, what happens if someone confesses? The elder beside you exhales slowly. Then it leaves. That's simple. You wait. An hour passes. No one comes forward. The goat continues. Historians still debate whether the legend of the one-eyed goat was rooted in real events, or if it was a social control mechanism, a way to instill accountability without formal courts. Some believe it was a metaphor for guilt, a visual hallucination that emerged in those most deeply burdened. Others claim the goat is real, an avatar of ancestral displeasure. Tonight, you don't care what the scholars say. The goat is real enough. You learn that in the past, the goat has also been a helper, a warning, a last chance. In one story, a woman was about to be exiled for poisoning her co-wife's food. The goat appeared the night before the punishment. The woman confessed. Turned out it wasn't poison. It was a spoiled ingredient. Her honesty saved her life. Sometimes the goat arrives not because of evil, but because of silence. You lie awake long after the goat disappears into the bush. You wonder what you've failed to say, who you've failed to thank, what promises, small or large, you've let drift past your lips without holding them fully. You whisper one now, not for the goat, for yourself, and hope that somewhere under the moonlight the circle has broken, just a little. There's electricity in the air tonight. Not the kind that powers homes or hums through wires. No, this electricity smells like wood smoke and tastes like something sweet stuck to the back of your tongue. You feel it in your fingertips, in the hairs on your arms. Even the fireflies seem to flicker faster. You're told Shango is coming, You try not to react, but inside, a shiver climbs your spine. Shango is the Orisha of thunder, lightning, drums, masculinity, power, rhythm, and fire. And tonight, the villagers are preparing to welcome him, not with fear, but with dance. They say he's most pleased when the fireflies gather. You follow the others down to a wide clearing near the riverbank. Already the drums had begun, a deep, rolling pulse that feels less like sound and more like weather. The women wear white. The men carry twin axes carved from polished wood. And at the center stands a dancer wrapped in red and gold, his arms bare, his wrists coiled with copper. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. He is Shango, at least for tonight. The ritual begins slowly. The dancer spins, stamps, twirls his axe. Sparks are thrown into the air from a bowl of powdered herbs, and the scent of something sharp, ginger, pepper, lightning, rides the breeze. Children press against their mothers. Elders nod in time, and then fireflies. Not dozens, hundreds. They swarm the clearing like they've been invited, blinking in unison, floating above heads and drums and shoulders. The crowd gasps softly, but no one speaks. To do so would be to shatter the mood, and Shango loves silence before thunder. Then the dancer begins to shout, not in fear, not in anger, in command. His feet strike the ground harder now. The drums follow, urgent, rapid, defiant. His body glows with sweat, his movements so fast they blur. He raises his axe, and suddenly the wind picks up, hard, wild. A gust that sweeps across the crowd and flips a cooking pot into the fire. No one flinches. This is expected. Shango doesn't arrive politely. Historians still debate how much of these Shango rituals were orchestrated spiritual theater versus genuine possession. Some believe the dancer enters a trance so deep he becomes a vessel for something ancient. Others think the rituals serve to express communal energy, to release the unspoken tension of harvests, marriages, betrayals, and buried grief. Tonight, it doesn't matter, because something is here. The dancer suddenly stops mid-spin, points toward a tree, and utters a phrase that no one repeats. The drummers pause. Everyone looks at the tree. A fruit drops. No one touches it. Later, you're told that when Shango speaks through the dancer, even the trees obey. That fruit will be left there until it rots or disappears. You ask someone, is he really possessed? They smile, half lit by fire. Or maybe we are. Maybe we are possessed by what we need him to be. You don't reply. You're still watching the fireflies. The dance continues, and the energy peaks. The drums are so loud your chest vibrates with them. Then, without warning, the dancer drops his axes, falls to his knees, and the wind dies instantly. Silence. Total. The fireflies blink once in unison, then scatter. You exhale. It feels like you've held your breath for an hour. Later, by the embers, the dancer, now just a man, sips palm wine and laughs with the drummers. No one speaks of what just happened. It doesn't need to be explained. The power arrived, was honored, and passed on. You lie down beside the fire and close your eyes. You dream of thunder that hums like a lullaby, of sparks that form words, of fireflies spelling your name in the dark. Tonight, something is missing. Not a person, not a sound, not even a shadow. It's silence itself, too silent, the kind that creeps into your ears and makes you wonder if you've gone deaf. Even the crickets seem to have stopped chirping. The leaves don't rustle. The night birds hold their breath. It's as though the entire village has been tucked inside cotton. You step out of your hut expecting the usual hum of night. Nothing. Even the fire doesn't crackle. People move slower. They don't greet each other. Doors are opened cautiously. Feet shuffled rather than stepped. A girl drops a cup. It doesn't break. You don't hear it hit the ground. And you finally ask the question floating unspoken through every pair of anxious eyes. What's happening? The answer comes from an elder who speaks like someone chewing air. The town is under a silence. Not imposed, not chosen, just arrived. It's called Iduro Oro, a night of quiet demanded by the spirits. No rituals, no drumming, no words above a whisper. Not for mourning, not for reverence, for warning. Something is being decided. You're told it happens every few years, always different, always sudden. But the outcome is the same. A night when sound feels risky, as if the wrong syllable might tip the world sideways. You whisper, "What happens if someone breaks the silence?" The elder closes her eyes. That depends on who hears them. Historians still debate whether these silences were coordinated spiritual acts or subconscious collective trauma responses. Times when something unexplained, like a death or bad harvest, caused a village to fall into unscripted ritual. Others say these silences are acts of listening, not fear. Tonight, no one argues. Everyone listens. The fire dims, not because no one feeds it, but because even the flames seem reluctant to speak. A mother hushes her baby before it cries. You sit near the shrine and feel the pressure in your chest grow. Not panic, something else. Like the air is full of things unsaid. Like hundreds of sentences hover above you, too afraid to land. At the edge of the compound, a boy opens his mouth to call for his goat. An elder gently touches his lips, shakes her head. The boy nods and sits down, hands clasped in his lap, eyes wide. No one moves much, no one eats. A few sip water from calabashes, but even the gulps are controlled. You lie back, eyes to the stars. Even the sky seems muted. No shooting stars, no clouds. Just a flat canvas waiting for someone to write something sacred on it, but not tonight. Then it happens. A woman stands. She walks calmly to the center of the square, raises both hands, and begins to hum. Not a song, not a tune, just a tone, soft, steady. It shouldn't be audible, but it is. Every ear turns toward it. Every heart stirs slightly. Then, as if on cue, the silence lifts, like a curtain fluttering in a breeze. No announcement, no end note. Just breath again. The crickets return first, then the fire snaps. A child coughs, a goat bleats, and the world breathes out. The elder turns to you. Sometimes, she says, the spirits aren't angry. They're just waiting to see if we're still listening. You nod. You hadn't realized how loud your mind had become until something asked it to sit still. That night, You dream of walking through fog with a bag full of feathers. Every time you try to speak, the feathers fly out and vanish. So you walk in silence until you find a fire, and beside it sits the woman who hummed. She smiles and hands your words back to you. Tonight, you follow an old path, one barely visible now, swallowed by grass and dust. The moon is dim, tucked behind a curtain of clouds, and the only light comes from the dull glow of a clay lantern swinging from the hand of an elderly woman. Her name is Mope, and she's bringing you to meet someone, or something. You walk for a long time, not speaking. The night feels stretched thin. Then, just as you begin to wonder if the walk will end at all, you see it. A clay hut, no larger than a goat shed, with patterns drawn in white chalk all around the doorway. In front of it sits a squat pot, sealed with a cloth and tied shut with layers of red thread. "This," Mope whispers, "is where she kept the wind." You don't respond right away, because what do you say to that? The story is passed in half-truths and fragments. Long ago, they say, a woman, nobody remembers her name, lived at the edge of the village. Quiet, kind, ordinary, except for one thing. Wherever she walked, the wind stopped. Leaves froze mid-fall, dust refused to rise, songs lost their breath halfway. She said nothing, but one night, when a great storm threatened to destroy the village, she walked calmly into the square, lifted a pot, opened it, and the storm dissolved. Gone, as if swallowed. Since then, no one has opened the pot. Not because they can't, because they won't. You sit near it now, and the air around you feels oddly still, not lifeless, just paused, like even the breeze is holding its questions back. Mope crouches beside it and lays a hand on the clay. She said the wind speaks, but not everyone listens, so she kept it somewhere safe. You're told the pot has been moved only once, during a fire. 3 men tried to carry it together. One developed a stutter that never went away. Another heard whispers in his sleep for a year. The third? He left the village the next morning and was never seen again. Still, the pot remains, untouched, unopened, respected. You ask, what if it's just a pot? Mope smiles. Then why are your hands sweating? You look down. They are. Historians still debate whether such vessels were used to store charms, medicinal herbs, or even coded language. Ritualistic metaphors passed down to encode lessons for future generations. Some liken the story to the Pandora myth, danger sealed in clay, waiting for an unsuspecting hand. Others suggest it's a lesson in restraint. Some knowledge should be preserved, not pursued. You sit in silence, listening for wind that isn't there. And slowly you begin to hear something else, the sound of stillness. It's not absence, it's intention. Like the pot is teaching you that silence is not what happens when sound ends. It's what exists beneath it all along. Mope reaches into a pouch and pulls out a strip of cloth. She ties it around your wrist, gently, as if wrapping a secret. To remind you, she says, that not everything lost needs to be found. You nod. You don't understand, but somehow you agree. That night, you return to your hut and feel the urge to open every jar you've ever left sealed, metaphorically or otherwise, to read old letters, to ask old questions, but you don't. You let them be. And in your dreams, you walk through a world where people carry pots, not to trap things, but to honor what they chose not to release. You wake with the taste of wind on your lips, and the feeling that something was said. Without a single sound, dawn breaks quietly. No rooster this morning, just the gentle stretch of sunlight through thatched rooftops and the rustle of people waking up without alarm or urgency. It's the last day of your journey here, though no one says it aloud. You feel it in the way the villagers look at you, softly, like closing a book you've read many times before. You're called to the square. There's no festival, no masks, no chalk lines, just people, sitting, standing, smiling faintly, and in the center, a stool. You're invited to sit. You hesitate, but your feet move anyway. The stool creaks under your weight, and the silence is warm, inviting, not heavy. A young girl steps forward and places a calabash in your lap. Inside it, nothing, or so it seems. Tonight, she says, you don't learn, you remember. And slowly, the village begins to speak. Not one by one, not in order, just voices. Each telling a different story you've already heard, but from another angle. The Aj who helped a mother grieve, the Babalawo who once threw the same Odu for a king, the wind that changed direction during a naming ceremony, a mask that was buried, then dug up, still warm. You recognize every story, but everyone has changed. You begin to realize what this has all been building toward, not power, not answers, but perspective. You weren't here to collect truths. You were here to see how truth lives, how it moves, how it shifts gently in the mouth of an elder and fiercely in the hands of a child drawing spirals in dust. One man tells you, "We don't use witches because we don't need blame to make sense of the world." A woman adds, "We use stories." A child pipes up, "We use dance." An elder smiles, "We use waiting." And suddenly, it all makes sense. The Yoruba didn't erase fear. They made space for it. They didn't label mystery. They learned to live with it. They didn't punish chaos. They gave it a mask, a festival, a name. Where others saw danger in the unknown, they saw potential for dialogue. You sit in silence again, staring into the empty calabash. It's not empty. It's full of everything you've felt since arriving. The shiver of wind after a whisper, the heartbeat in a drum that didn't stop when the song did, the way your own name felt heavier when spoken by someone who believed it belonged to you. And just like that, the gathering ends. No applause, no goodbye. People stand, stretch, return to their lives. You remain on the stool for a moment longer, feeling the air shift around you. And you understand what the Yoruba used instead of witches was wisdom. Not the kind in books, the kind that breathes, the kind that waits until you've asked the wrong question 3 times before revealing that the right one was never about why, but how do we carry it. Later that night, as your journey prepares to close, you sit beneath the tree near your hut. Someone brings you a bowl of food, soft yam, rich stew, and a single kola nut placed neatly on top. You ask, "Is it for me?" The person smiles, "Yes," and the others? You look around. No one else is there. But you understand. You eat slowly. The wind rises, not as a storm, as a lullaby. Soft close, a whisper after the story. Now that the story has ended and the last drumbeat has faded into the quiet spaces of your mind, let's slow everything down. There's nothing left for you to learn right now, nothing to chase. You've walked the paths of a people who held mystery gently, who didn't need witches to explain sorrow, who didn't strike at shadows when things went wrong, but instead asked questions of the wind, whispered to trees, waited for laughter, and let silence do its own speaking. You can rest now. Let your breath move more slowly, like the rhythms you heard deep in the night. Remember how the village would quiet itself, how the fire would glow without crackling, how even the stars sometimes seemed to lean in and listen. You're part of that now. No need to prove anything. No need to name every feeling. Just be still. The names you are given, spoken or secret, are safe with you. The stories you heard can stay folded in the soft corners of your memory, like a note written long ago that you're finally allowed to reread. There's no pressure to recall them all. The ones you need will come back when it's time. They always do. If there's something you're still holding, guilt, confusion, tiredness, you can place it in a small bowl in your imagination now, just like the widow with the stones in water. Let it sit there, ripple free. There's no judgment here, only the space to breathe. Remember the wind that passed without warning, the fireflies that danced before thunder, the one-eyed goat who walked in circles just to remind someone of a promise. These were not threats. They were invitations. Invitations to return, to notice, to stay close to what's real and human and old. You have that now. Let your body soften, even if you're lying on a couch or wrapped in blankets. Let your shoulders sink a little. Let the muscles in your face stop performing. You don't need to hold yourself up right now. Everything is held for you. The earth holds you like it did the roots of the unburned tree. The sky holds your name even when you forget it. The silence holds your questions even when you stop asking. And if you dream tonight, may it be of riverbanks and calabashes, of masked dancers and drums that talk, of stories told not to scare you, but to steady you, of a world that saw chaos and chose not to punish it, but to give it form, give it rhythm, give it grace. You've been here long enough now to understand the final lesson. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They're meant to be sat with, and that's exactly what you've done. So close your eyes. Let the wind return. Let the shadows rest. And may every part of you that wandered during the day come back now, quietly, and curl beside you like a story ready to sleep.